Hello, beep, 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 and all that, beep, beep, beep. Look, sunny stuff going on. God, I can't wait till I've got another room to do this in, so it looks a bit more professional, you know? That's what we want, a bit more professional. I don't know. What do I know? Anyway, let's have some good news for a change, shall we? Sexmatters.org, run by a number of people, including the redoubtable Maya Forstatter and Helen Joyce and various other people that are involved with it, have been recently attempting to get together a petition that will allow the word sex to mean biological sex in the Equality Act. And this is something that I know many of you signed. I've shared it half a dozen times to get it round. And what we now have is a letter that was sent yesterday by email on the 3rd of December, the 3rd of April. I think I'd know it's my birthday month. The 3rd of April, to the Right Honourable Kemi Badenoch, Secretary of State for Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy and Minister for Women and Equalities. From Baroness Faulkner, the chairwoman of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. All links, as usual, are in the doobries, but this is just a brief overview, a few of the points that have been made by the Equality and Human Rights Commission before you all run like a bunch of madmen to read it, which we'll do, because it's good news, okay? Dear Secretary of State, thank you for your letter of the 21st of February requesting our considered advice on the benefits or otherwise of an amendment to the Equality Act 2010 on the current definition of sex, along with any connected or consequential enactments, bearing in mind the advantages and disadvantages that such a change might entail for affected groups. You rightly mentioned Section 11 of the Equality Act, an amendment in 2006, which sets out under subsection 11 our power to advise government about the effectiveness of the current law. They're writing in line with their statutory provision, so they can do this. It's a statutory instrument that allows them to do so. What's particularly interesting is that they've chosen to put together a document which essentially makes the argument for sex as a protected characteristic being made to be biological sex. Okay? And what they've done is they've been able to put to bed a lot of stuff. Right? So, this letter provides our initial response. Should the government wish to pursue work in this area, we recommend detailed policy and legal analysis. We would be happy to support that process, doing so in line with our current strategy. The consultation for our strategic plan revealed that, out of all protected characteristics, sex was important to the highest proportion of respondents, and that many respondents were concerned about interaction between the protected characteristics of gender reassignment and sex. In their strategic plan for 2022 to 2025, they said that they would contribute to public debates and clarify the law on equality and human rights issues, and that's exactly what they've done. And the focus is also in line with what's called the public sector equality duty, which organisations that provide a public service or organisations that are the public service are required to adhere to, and which many have not been adhering to. The Equality Act 2010 attempted to strike reasonable balances between the rights of people with 9 protected characteristics. Since 2010, however, society has evolved considerably in matters relating to the 2 protected characteristics of sex and gender reassignment. For example, language has evolved. The Act refers to trans people as transsexuals and uses the terms sex and gender at times interchangeably, with the requirement on employers to report gender pay gaps. In fact, a duty to report on pay differences according to the protected characteristics of sex. Right, so there's confusion around sex and gender. We know that, right? Now, moreover, many trans people today would not describe themselves as transitioning from one sex to another, but living as a more fluid gender identity or without reference to a binary gender identity at all. That's about the only problem I've got with this entire thing, because that's just nonsense. Right? It's just nonsense. Their legal protection in the Act may be unclear, as in practice trans people are unlikely to be required to provide proof of their legal status, except in unusual and uncommon situations. So they've picked that there is a number of problems that go along with what's happening. But what they're saying is that the problem really with this confusion is that it's inhibiting civil debate and therefore will affect the law. the courts have confirmed the concept of legal sex. That's the thing, legal sex as opposed to sex. The legal fiction of illegal sex has been confirmed by the courts in their interpretation of the meaning of the protected characteristic of sex in the Equality Act. The EHRC has consistently understood this to be the position of the law as it currently stands, and we've based our guidance and interventions until now on that understanding. So they're basing it on what the current law is. However, this raises questions in legal interpretation and in practice. Notwithstanding the existence of a statutory exceptions permitting different treatment of trans people where justified, i.e. if they're men and women, which of course they are, where justified in our guidance to explain the law, it has not been straightforward for service providers and employers to apply the law, including in areas such as sport and health services. So they're covering the whole gamut of what we've been whinging and moaning about for a very long time now, and it's to Sex Matters credit that we've got this far, and everybody else who's been involved in the work, so well done. The EHRC has looked at this issue over several successive board meetings and has considered various routes forward, all of which have advantages and disadvantages for one group or another. There is no straightforward balance, but we have come to the view that if sex is defined as biological sex for the purpose of the Equality Act, this would bring greater clarity in 8 areas legally, a greater legal clarity in 8 areas. So, for example, pregnancy and maternity as things stand, protections in the Equality Act for pregnant women and new mothers fail to cover trans men who are pregnant and whose legal sex is male. Defining sex as biological sex resolves that. Freedom of association for gay, lesbian and gays. If sex means legal sex, then sexual orientation changes on acquiring a GRC from a legal perspective. Some trans women with a GRC become legally lesbian. This is the problem, see? It's nonsense, isn't it? Get rid of the GRC, that's the easiest way to do it, Faulkner. But in the meantime, let's get this done. This is a tremendous piece of work and a real step forward. As things stand, a lesbian support group may have to admit a trans woman, and the same would go for gay men. On the biological definition, it would restrict membership to biological women. Freedom of association for women and men, as things stand, a book club may have to admit a trans woman who obtained a GRC when it was only for women. The biological definition would restrict that. Positive action, trans women with a GRC would benefit from winning over women-only shortlists, whereas trans men who are women would not. This definition of sex would correct this. And on we go. Occupational requirements, single sex and separate services, sport, data collection, and then we get to the change would be more ambiguous or potentially disadvantageous in 3 areas. Equal pay provisions. At present, a trans woman with a GRC can bring an equal pay claim by citing a legally male comparator who has paid more. A trans man with a GRC could not. The proposed biological definition would reverse this situation. This would effect would be to transfer the right from some trans women to some trans men. So in other words, if you're it just puts things correct the way they should be. Direct sex discrimination. A trans woman with a GRC can bring a claim of direct sex discrimination as a woman. A trans man with a GRC could not. The proposed biological definition would reverse this situation. The effect will be to transfer the right from some trans women to some trans men. That's going from the men to the women then, right? Let's get our head around that. And then at present, a trans woman with a GRC could bring a claim of indirect discrimination, and again, it would reverse that process. They have concerns that they've noted about the behaviour of this particular change in legislation in relation to Article 8 as written in the Human Rights Court in Strasbourg, and go and have a look, right? Go and have a look. It includes the right to marry, things of that nature. However, in cases where a state is balancing competing rights, for instance, the rights of trans women and of biological women, Strasbourg has allowed a wide margin of appreciation. Indeed, human rights law may require the statutory recognition of biological sex. Are we getting it yet, you lovelies? Then it says that it should be carefully considered, right, with due regard to the public sector equality duty, and in particular any possible disadvantages for trans men and trans women, i.e. men and women. There are also likely to be some consequential amendments to the Equality Act that will be required, the detail of which we have not covered in this short initial response. This is a tremendous move by the Equality and Human Rights Commission to begin the eradication of the concept of gender identity from British society. It also goes into what happens in Scotland and what it will mean in Scotland. But by reasserting the ascendancy of sex over gender, it would mean that biological sex would be precisely what it is, and nobody could claim that they were what they were. It's a start, folks. It's really good. Congratulations to everybody that was involved. It's a real good beginning. It means that if, in essence, all of the bits and bobs that have been causing so many problems will be put right. Once they do that, we can then begin to eradicate the whole notion from schools and everywhere else. So congratulations to everyone involved. Nice bit of good news for a Tuesday. I'll see you later. Bye.